The following was recorded during the COVID-19 pandemic through Zoom meetings in accordance with local health guidelines. Hi, I'm Mike Maloney, and welcome to this special edition of the CSRM podcast with Dr. Greg Linville and Andrew Fouts.
Hi, welcome back. We're with another CSRM podcast, and it's great to do it with my good friend, Andrew Fouts. Glad you're aboard here, Andrew.
Glad to be here.
And we are in the midst of talking about transition of CSRM, the re-engineering, the re-envisioning of where we are, where we've been, and where we need to go, who we need to be, what we need to do. And we've talked in the past about the transition of staff and how that's growing and how we have a new executive director. You want to hear anything about where we're headed with staff, that's been in the previous couple podcasts. And we've talked also then about my transition, and I'm overseeing the Overwhelming Victory Press and our publishing house. We now have 11 books that have been published, and many of them are being turned into not just the hard copy, but also the digital, the Kindle version. We have our first translation taking place in the Malagasy of one of our books. And we're hoping to eventually have books translated into at least 4 languages. That would include Arabic, French, Spanish, and of course the Malagasy. But we're hoping that that's going to continue. And we're also doing some audio and video books, the series that is currently being aired through CSRM Podcast on the Sports Outreach Fundamentals book, that we talk about it and we kind of teach from that. But we have a lot of that stuff going on. But with Overwhelming Victory Flix, we're expanding in a couple of different areas. And Andrew, we've talked about this, but I'd like to go a step deeper into what we call the Tuesday Talks. This evolved out of COVID conversations that happened, I believe, a year ago now, like April or something.
It was May of 2020.
And we did one a week, and we talked about how COVID was impacting local church sports, rec, and fitness, and how do you do those ministries in the midst of COVID and masking and distancing and all those things. And I think they're still very relevant. And if you're interested in some of those thoughts, certainly check those out. But then it led us into, let's do this on a monthly basis. We call them Tuesday Talks because that's what they are. We get people from around the world that are supposedly experts. I say that because sometimes I'm the expert, supposedly. And the rest of the people certainly are. And we talk about kind of overarching issues or trends that local church sports ministers are going to be facing. Leadership issues, theological issues, anything that is going to be a little bit overarching. It's not necessarily how do you do your youth sports league. We get into that, but we give you the foundations for how to do it rather than the practical day-to-day kinds of things. And these are conversations. They're organic. They're spirited back and forth. We get some people that go back and forth. And some of the folks that have been around a while have enough history that they joke with one another, they pick with one another, and we have a good time. And then there's a listening audience, if you will. And we've been averaging probably 30 or so people on the live version where people listen in and then they text us questions and we get some answers to those, try to make it as relevant as we can. It's not really a webinar. It's not really a podcast. It's a unique kind of a thing. Your thoughts about it, Andrew?
Yeah, it kind of actually originally originated, if we can use all those words together. It kind of came out of the fact that we all were just kind of sitting around in quarantine when we were supposed to all be gathering together at Reach conference. And I don't remember fully if it was you and Greg English or you and who all it was, but finally you're like, why don't we just get together over Zoom and just talk? And from there, we were like, okay, well, we've talked. Now what? Let's record this. Let's put it out there. And then, well, let's invite other people. Okay, well, let's just let other people invite themselves. And so, it's grown out of just, four friends, four partners in ministry that were, missing their yearly gathering of being together, just getting together to talk shop and talk Jesus. And then it's grown from that to where, we're tackling big issues. February's of 2021, we hit the race issue head on. And there were some difficult revelations about the culture of the American church that came out in that talk, but it was very good because it had to happen, and it provided a space to do that.
And it wasn't just talking about race issues. We did that, but we talked about how a local church sports rec fitness ministry is such a catalyst for how to reconciliation. Most worship services on a Sunday and a Lord's Day morning, you're either white, Asian, Hispanic, and Hispanic has got a lot of different. None of these are monocultures at all. I mean, you've got everything from white Pentecostals to white Catholic, and it doesn't just have one this one group, just a monoculture. All of those groups are multicultural, and yet when it is just that culture in a worship on a Lord's Day, how can the sports industry deal with that? So go back for those of you that want to tap into that. That's recorded. And so we get 30 or so people on that 75-minute time frame. We talk about those issues, and then many people watch it, and they are very involved in it. Lots of different things as it's recorded.
Yeah, and those of you that want to find out more about either how to join in on the next call or to listen to some of the past ones we were just talking about, the easiest place to find all of the information on the Tuesday Talks is at overwhelmingvictory.org/Tuesday Talks. We've got, a description, we've got the email, we've got links to whatever platform you're more comfortable with, whether that's audio or video or both. So it's overwhelmingvictory.org/Tuesday Talks. That personally for me, I think was one of the most exciting things that we've gotten to do so far with OVF during this transition period that we've been talking about. But Greg, we want to talk a little bit also about something that some of you that have been listening for a while, or at least been on our YouTube page for a long time, know about, is the Agone Institute. It's our master's level resourcing, master's level classes, all that different stuff using a lot of the books that Dr. Linville has written, as well as, going over the history of sports ministry, the history of sports ministers, dealing with the theological, the philosophical, and the methodological stuff. So Greg, share a little bit about what's going on with Agone and, what people can expect from that.
Yeah, the Agone Institute of Sports Outreach is one of my core areas of responsibility, and we have believed for a long time that sports ministers need to be people that don't just know how to play a game, and they don't just know how to play or pray. And that's what a lot of people say. Oh, you guys, you go down to the gym and you just play and pray. Well, we're really saying that every one of them need to be credentialed. That's one of the 4 C's of CSRM. And so that credentialing comes through by, we really recommend that they get ordained or recorded or whatever ministerial license in your denomination and your faith journey and faith community, but also that educated. And we don't want to turn people into educated eggheads where they know a bunch of stuff but can't do anything. But we believe that they can do what they do better if they know not only the what, but also the why and the how and the when and the where and the with whom. And so this Agone Institute, the Agone word is a Greek word that means the sporting experience, the confrontations, the conflicts, the adversary that you come up against. And so the sports person knows that I've got an obstacle. And so we have an obstacle oftentimes, but it's intellectual, or it's in our heart or life. And so the Agone is helping sports ministers learn. They get their head knowledge so that they can get that information that then leads to transformation in their very life. And when their information and their personal transformation, that means going deep with Jesus, going deep in his word, that then translates into ministry formation. And so often we try to form our ministry before our minds are renewed or our hearts are transformed and redeemed. And so this whole institute is based upon those things. But then we've pitched it at the master's level so that it could be dumbed down, if you will, for a bachelor's degree, or it could be dumbed up for the doctoral degree, if you will. And somebody could take these courses. And currently, if somebody is already in a degree program, they can take our courses, and they have to get their dean or their academic provost or somebody at their university to make that their course would be substituted by this Agone Institute. But then it's solid, and it's about evangelism, disciple making. It's about the history in the first 3 centuries, first 6 centuries, and the last 3 centuries. It's about the administration, about the organization. It's about the theology. It's about the ethics. It has all of those things, all those the departments and different things that you've got to get to know what you're going to do. So yeah, that's what the Agone is.
It's interesting that there's not a lot of these kind of things out there, because one of the things that we know as athletes is that when we actually know why we're doing something and know the scouting behind it, we're able to implement it a lot better, which is what the whole point of the Agone Institute is. But yet oftentimes we think that if we're talking about this from a ministry perspective, we just assume that we don't need all that pastoral stuff because we're just out here to reach the athlete. But without that knowledge, we aren't able to actually minister to the people that we have in front of us. And this is part of what has caused the disconnects that we talk about in sports outreach fundamentals. This is even part of what we see even expanding outside of the ministry thing into even some of the political world with the whole shut up and dribble thing, is that without us being aware of why we are doing things and being able to communicate that to people just see us as athletes, as people that can't do anything else but play. And so that's all we're doing. They see us as the sports ministers as, basically glorified babysitters with dodgeballs or basketballs. And we, part of what we want to do within CSRM, this was even before our transition. This, I believe, was part of the initial vision, that you guys had in that hotel room at SOA, is we want to not only equip and train people, but to be able to equip disciple makers, to train trainers, to do all this stuff so that not only do you understand why you're doing it, but you can explain it well. You can vision cast to your other staff members. Like we talked about last episode, you're able to train up the next generation of leaders. And the Agone Institute is a very good way of doing that.
What we call reproducing reproducers.
There's the word. This kind of goes into even what we're talking about the Agone Institute. We here at CSRM have kind of created our own language. A lot of it you have created. I know PF has put in a lot as well. I just created the word Kindleized a few episodes ago, so I guess I can claim that one also. This is something that CSRM does, is we try to find these things that are not there and offer them up, even if that means we have to do all the back work to create them.
That's right.
And this even leads into what you talked about before with our translation department. Those of you, I'm gonna put a little plug in here for you. We need help with our translation department. It's up and coming. If you have, a gift for languages and would like to help us with that, contact us. Let us know how you'd be willing to help. You may end up having to translate an untranslatable word because, words like Christmanship did not exist until Dr. Linville coined them. It's not just, transcribing. It's about understanding, like we were just talking about. It's about understanding what's going on so you are able to communicate it well.
Yeah, we need the Spanish speaker to help us with Spanish translation and the French, and that needs to be their native tongue. But there's also some things that we're doing now. We're moving into some areas, and I know that we're going to be heading this direction in future podcasts and future ways that we're going. But OVR radio. So we've got the Tuesday talks. We've got the podcast that you're listening and watching now. And this has been going on for a number of years. These are all archived. You can go back. We had it as a mind, in our mind, it would work with our Agone Institute because these would be, the videos, the audios that a professor at Indiana Wesleyan or, Johnson University or Oklahoma Baptist or wherever you're at, that you could plug and play. You could grab that 20-minute podcast or that 75-minute Tuesday talk, and you could play it for your class, but also just you could play for your staff at your church. This is something we're struggling with, and now let's go listen to that. Okay, but there's so much more that needs to be done in these areas, and so the Overwhelming Victory Radio is part of what we're envisioning to help in some of the ways in the periphery, if you will. I mean, let's talk about our board chair, Dwight McDowell, and his wonderful wife. They've been doing mentoring for a long time, and in specific, marriage mentoring, family mentoring. Most of our sports ministers end up getting married at some point, and most who are married end up having children at some point. You're a perfect example of that, Andrew. And I had kids, so all of us, we tend to go down these directions, and sometimes to have a podcast or a Tuesday talk just on, something that really isn't that the pastor of your church or the elder board or the trustees of your church are going to say, well, how does that help us clean the building or maintain the building or do the outreach? Well, if the sports minister, if they're not healthy, then they're not going to do as well in their ministry. And so we're looking to see this whole marriage mentoring thing from White and Angela, and that's going to be one of these OVR podcasts.
And their podcast is already they had this podcast before we came along. We're just helping them along the way. Called The Call of a Mentor, which if you go to the overwhelmingvictory.org/OV radio, you'll be able to find, you can listen to their podcast straight from there, or you can go to, go to Apple Podcasts where they're at, Anchor FM.
And yet some of what they're going to be doing for us is even more specific to the local church minister who is trying to navigate all these things. We've got the Cowtown Adventures, and this is going to be with one of our board members who has done successfully the outdoor hunting, fishing. Special that I like about him is how to barbecue it all.
Yeah, that. By the way, he's got some very interesting plans for the first time that you're on an episode with him for barbecuing. Just be aware. I told him I wouldn't give much details, but those of you listening are going to want to watch.
But if your church doesn't have a barbecue Bubba club, you need to get that. And Jamie's helping us with some of that stuff. And I know we're going to do Ministry Misfits, and that's something that's in your heart. And some of that has to do with the fact that people that, oh, you mean you're not a pulpit preacher? Oh, you mean you're not? And no, I'm a sports minister, or I'm an outreach director or something. And so helping people to recognize their call and be fulfilled in it. And I know we're down to just our last 2 or 3 minutes here. We're going to go into that. We've also got one that is going to be with our current executive director who will be sliding into our director for education and credentialing, and David Waddell and the guy that you talked about, the John Longworth. And we don't know what that's going to look like.
All we know is it's going to be amazing.
It's going to be fun. But they're going to help people recognize some of those things that you encounter during your ministry. And all of these are part of a growing family that CSRM is saying that every sports minister at a local church, they have to know how to run the league. They have to know how to maintain the gym floor and the softball field. But there's these other things that make up their life. And so we need to have some of those things really part and available for them. So that's part of the resources of what we're doing. Again, we're down to our last minute or two, Andrew, but
yeah, one thing I want to also just to let people know, because we talked about the Agone Institute as it being master's level, or it could be bachelor's or doctorate, all of our books. This is something that also, the Overwhelming Victory board is full of internationally renowned people that have been doing this for a while. They're experts in their field. You don't have to feel like this is just, another ministry is releasing their own stuff. Realistically, a lot of our stuff is peer reviewed. I mean, we are not just, this isn't just a fly by the seat of our pants operation. We have, people that have been doing this for a long time that are experts in their field, that are recognized as experts in their field. I mean, Vicky Byler just alone should be enough reason for people to recognize we have people that know what they're doing in this field.
Without a doubt.
This is something that will, if you're a student listening, this is not something that you should be afraid to be able to use as a resource.
And let me just say this on that line. I think we'll probably have to end with this, but that if you want to take part in the Agone Institute, you don't have to move someplace. It's not a four-wall university. It's a cyber university, but it does come with live components to it. And part of every one of these courses, you'll be sitting with one of our CSRM experts and actually having that mentoring relationship. There will be videos that you'll watch. Some of it will be that kind of the traditional reading and writing and researching, but and it's no less academic in that sense, but there is a live component to it. And we positioned the OVP, the Overwhelming Victory Crest, the OVF, and the Agone Institute, all of those we put right at the level that we hope we're getting shot at by that academic egghead that I am one. I'm not criticizing my peers there. And that we're saying, where's the research for this? There's not enough citations, and it's got to read like this academic journal. But also on the other side, the practitioner says, man, what does that word mean? And how do I apply that? And we're hoping that this group is saying it's too academic, and that this group is saying it's too pedestrian or too right there on the street. And that's where we want to be. We want to position it so both people are growing. Andrew, we've got a lot to talk about here.
Yep. And just to
go there in the future.
Yep. And those of you that, again, if you want to find out more about all that, go to overwhelmingvictory.org. You can find out all about all of the different resources, including the Agone Institute there.
All right. We will see you on the next podcast. And Andrew, what will we be talking about then?
I honestly don't remember.
This is live.
Yes. This is why you stuck me on the Misfits title.
We've got some. We're going to go in more in depth with some of these OBRs.
Yes, there we go. The part that I'm actually in charge of. Yes, that's what.
Good to be with everybody. Tune in next time.